Now, having familiarized ourselves with Ban Zhao's life and works, let's move to the topic of her most famous or infamous piece, Precepts for My Daughters. Before we read Precepts, let's first ponder on some paradoxes associated with Ban Zhao as a historical figure. In terms of her life and career, Ban Zhao was right at the heart of imperial government by being the trusted mentor of a powerful female regent whose reign lasted over a decade. However, Ban Zhao never relished the literary and political influences she wielded, as far as we can tell from existing sources. Her case thus forms a sharp contrast to the later case of Empress Wu and Shangguan Wan'er during the Tang Dynasty, which we'll soon discuss. Moreover, whereas it was not uncommon for young widows to remarry during the Han Dynasty, Ban Zhao never had another marriage throughout the decades following her husband's death. This has often been interpreted as a sign of her adherence to the idea of female chastity. Likely, Ban Zhao had indeed internalized the ritual teachings she wrote about, and precepts express her thinking along those lines. Nevertheless, while asserting women's subordinate roles, precepts make interesting moves towards affirming women's personhood and rights for education, as we shall discuss next. According to Ban's own preface, Precepts for My Daughters was meant to circulate within the Ban lineage. Since Ban Zhao was in her 50s when writing precepts, likely she was not addressing her own daughters, who would have been married a long time ago, considering the custom of early marriage during the period. Rather, she was instructing other young women in her household who were about to become brides. Despite the claimed private purposes of the book, it came to the knowledge of the other upper-class families, who made copies of the book and taught it to the young women in their households. Centuries later, when the rise of Neo-Confucianism, or Li Xue, promoted a more conservative gender ideology during the Song Dynasty, Precepts for My Daughters became a prominent female conduct book. The broad application of precepts as a morality book during the later centuries might have been quite different from the book's purposes Ban Zhao had first envisioned. Precepts rendered Ban Zhao a moral paragon for the conservative branch of Confucian thinkers. However, during and after the feminist movement of the early 20th century, Ban Zhao came to be villainized as the propagator of a repressive ideology that had kept women down for over a millennium in Chinese history. When we look at the content of precepts, it is admittedly very repressive from a modern perspective. The piece has 7 short chapters, the first being lowly and weak, 卑弱, and the first lines go as follows. In ancient times, a daughter was placed under the bed on the second day after her birth, given a tile to play with, and then her relatives fasted and announced her birth to the ancestors. She was placed under the bed to show her lowliness and weakness, and emphasize that she would serve others. She was given a tile to play with, to show that she had to get used to hard work, and to emphasize that she would keep to her tasks. 古者生女3日，卧之床下，弄之瓦砖，而斋告焉。卧之床下，名其卑弱，主下人也；弄之瓦砖，名其习劳，主执勤也。The idea of placing a baby girl under the bed and giving her a tile to play with came from the classic of rites, 礼记. According to the same classical passage from classic rites, baby boys were supposed to be placed on the bed and given a piece of fine jade to play with. Fine jade was a symbol of nobility or ritual status. The titles for baby girls, on the other hand, were likely associated with parts of the weaving loom. It is unclear to which extent these ritual statements were applied in social reality, but they were so widely known that playing with jade, 弄浆, and playing with tiles, 弄瓦, became common references to baby boys and girls during the transitional period, but few would say that nowadays. As terrible as these gendered ideas must sound to modern ears, the birth of either a boy or a girl was an occasion meant for celebration. Precepts continues to state that the girl's birth would be announced to the ancestors. Her relatives fasted and announced her birth to the ancestors to show that she'll be in charge of maintaining the ancestral sacrifices, as the text goes. We must note that this household, where the girl would carry out her ritual duty, must be her future husband's family, instead of her birth family. As a whole, Precepts was written for brides-to-be, so Ban Zhao began the piece by underscoring the girl's most important duty in her new family, that is, to worship the ancestors of the family she would serve for the rest of her life, according to ritual prescriptions. Precepts then asserts that the wife must act with modesty and submission, deference and respect, and to place others before oneself, to live without being praised for one's virtues, and to suffer every injustice, to bear shame and hide disgrace, and to live always as if filled with fear. This is what it means to be lowly and weak and serve others. 谦让恭谨，先人后己，有善莫名，有恶莫辞，忍辱含垢，常若畏惧，是谓卑弱下人也。She also must get used to hard work, to retire late and rise again early, and whether at the break of day or late at night, to take care of all the household affairs without shirking either the heavy or the easy tasks, and always to complete what one has started in a proper and tidy manner. This is what it means to keep to one's tasks. 晚寝早作，勿怠夙夜，职务私事，不辞具意，所作必成，守纪整理，是谓执勤也。Finally, she must always have proper manners. To serve one's husband and master with a proper expression and a dignified behavior, to keep oneself pure and clean, to refrain from indulging in banter and laughter, and properly prepare food and wine for the ancestral sacrifices. This is what it means to maintain in the ancestral sacrifices. 正色端操，以示夫主，清静自守，无好戏笑，节其酒食，以供祖宗，是谓祭祭祀也。Note here how the husband is referred to as the wife's master, 夫主, similar to the Old English way of calling one's husband, Lord. As we have seen, the whole discussion of Chapter 1 places the wife at a low and self-effacing position, similar to that of a servant or a slave. However, it is interesting to note that Ban Zhao ends this chapter with an emphasis on the wife's reputation. I have never known anyone to worry that their good name would not be known and that they might suffer divorce and dishonor if they were perfect in these three things. But if you fail in any of these three things, there will be no good name to be spread, and divorce and dishonor will be unavoidable. 三者苟备，而患名称之不闻，触辱之在身，谓之见也。 三者苟失之，何名称之可闻？触辱之可远哉？ Reputation or good name is by nature public. Especially the original text uses the word 闻, which suggests broad dissemination, as in modern terms 新闻, 闻名. This public orientation contradicts the domestic role women were limited to as the inner person. On this note, we may say that while Ban Zhao's writing apparently objectifies a woman as a servant for her husband and master, she in fact had the woman's own social identity and personhood in mind. This makes wonder if her extremely conservative views as we see it today incorporated a strategic move to bestow a ritual status or social import upon women within the cultural framework of the time. The ending of Chapter 1 also highlights the practical consequence if a woman strays away from those codes for wifely behaviors. That is, she'll be divorced and dishonored. In traditional China, divorce was a male privilege, even though occasionally a woman could take the initiative, usually when she came from a powerful family background. Divorcing a wife was known as 出 out or 休 put to stop. According to ritual texts, which had legal powers, a woman could be divorced due to any of the following 7 offenses. 不顺父母, unfilial, that is a lack of filial devotion to the husband's parents. 无子, childless, or more precisely, sonless, meaning the failure to bear a male offspring. 淫, adultery. 妒, jealousy, which would involve any effort against her husband taking concubines, especially for the purpose of having male offspring. 有恶疾, severe disease. 多言, talking too much. 窃盗, theft. In this context, the behavioral codes in the first chapter of Precepts speak to all these grounds for divorce. In this aspect, they may be viewed as a survival guide for young brides in an unequal system of marriage. The rest of Precepts continues the theme of the first chapter on the subordinate position of women in marriage, and the last 2 chapters focus on the imperatives for her to please her in-laws and other relatives in her husband's family. Nevertheless, throughout these discussions, there is another underlying theme on the woman's good name and her inner cultivation and dignity. This again invites us to discover a more progressive tone from Precepts. Notably, in Chapter 2, Ban Zhao made what's probably the earliest argument in Chinese history on the necessity of women's education. After asserting the husband's and wife's different roles in a marriage, she proposed that both genders should be educated to be able to fulfill those opposite yet complementary duties. As she says in this chapter, does not instructing only the sons and not the daughters betray a total ignorance of the different norms governing the one and the other? According to the rites, children should be taught to read and write when they are 8 years old, and at 15, they should be sent to school. Cannot we simply make this the general rule? 但教男而不教女，不亦必于彼此之术乎？礼8岁始教之书，15而志于学矣。独不可依此以为则哉？ Although the type of education she proposed was about women internalizing their subordinate role rather than anything more liberating, the very idea of female education diverged from the general cultural neglect of women's inner development as a person. In this regard, Ban Zhao's writing broke new grounds in women's history in China. Another example of Ban Zhao's implied argument on women's potential for cultivation can be found in Chapter 4, when she describes the four wifely comportment: wifely virtue, wifely speech, wifely appearance, and wifely work. 妇德、妇言、妇容、妇功. To explain those wifely comportments, she draws a comparison to male cultivation by quoting from the Analects. They are very easy to practice. All one needs is the resolve. A sage of old once said, "How could humaneness be so far away? The minute I wish for humaneness, then humaneness is there." The same applies in this case. 然为之甚易，唯在存心耳。古人有言：人远乎哉？我欲人，而人思之矣。此之谓也。In the original context, Confucius made this statement on the wish to be humane to emphasize the importance of intention in a man's cultivation towards becoming a junzi, a man equipped with moral nobility. In classical Confucian texts, women are often treated as temptations or morally inferior beings, rarely related to matters such as intention, resolve, and moral cultivation. In this context, Ban Zhao's writing in fact restored a sense of female personhood and agency, as she argues that a woman can earn a proper and respected place in the ritual system through education and through her own efforts. So what were Ban Zhao's motives behind the writing of precepts? Among modern interpreters, there have been a lot of theories. One of those ideas is that she wrote in the wake of a scandal that happened to one of her female family members. To prevent similar incidents, she composed the precepts as a warning to the other young girls in the Ban lineage. Another idea is that, despite the stated private purposes of the piece, Ban Zhao wrote precepts as an argument against the expansion of female power at the imperial court. We have discussed that she had a close relationship with the female regent of the time, Empress Deng. The Han Dynasty also witnessed several earlier cases of female rulership, such as Empress Lu, who was notorious for her ruthlessness after the death of her husband, the founder of the Han Dynasty, Liu Bang. Shortly after the establishment of the Eastern Han Dynasty in year 25, around the time when Ban Zhao was born, Emperor Guangwu ordered to remove Empress Lu's spiritual tablet from the Han Ancestral temple as a condemnation of her usurpation of power. In this context, Ban Zhao might have worried that Empress Deng would eventually suffer a similar fate, and thus written precepts as a warning to her powerful pupil and other palace women having similar ambitions. Ban Zhao might have actually internalized all the ritual principles she preaches in precepts, or she might have made those statements from a strategic point of view, or it could be a combination of both. In any case, Ban Zhao might have written precepts to uphold or protect the reputations of the women around her, although, due to a lack of sources, her original intention was likely forever lost to us. We may also agree with the authors of Red Brush that Precepts was written as a practical guide, or rather a survival guide. In their words, most likely the text was not written as a blind justification of the traditional division of labor between women and men, but rather as a practical guide for young and inexperienced girls on how to survive when they suddenly find themselves in the unfamiliar and intimidating surroundings of their husband's home. As to the afterlife of precepts, it was deemed important enough to be included in full in Ban Zhao's biography in the latter history of Han, Hou Han Shu. In social reality, likely the type of ritual dictates stated in precepts were never seriously carried out until after the rise of Neo-Confucianism during the Song dynasty around the 10th century. However, the most widespread and conservative cultural practices regarding female chastity and subordination would occur during the last two imperial dynasties, Ming and Qing. After precepts, there have been other moral tracts written by women for women, yet none of them achieved the same kind of popularity or status as precepts. Following her own principle of not talking too much, Ban Zhao left behind few words about herself, and only a fraction of her once voluminous writings was now extant. The paradoxes surrounding Ban Zhao's life and precepts for my daughters do leave behind many lingering questions. Judging by the brief yet impressive description of her scholarly and political career in historical sources, Ban Zhao was both a literary genius and a capable administrator, nothing short of a trailblazer in Chinese history. Yet she was mostly remembered for a piece that has cast her image as a cultural conservative, a woman writer propagating anti-woman views. Once looking at precepts closely, nevertheless, we may say that there is probably more to it than that meets the eye, and certain information underlying the piece might have been forever lost in the distant past. While we confront Ban Zhao's words across thousands of years in an entirely different age, but where the questions regarding how to be a woman in a male-dominated world remain as unsettling as those facing this brilliant woman writer of Eastern Han China. On this note, we conclude our unit on Ban Zhao. Please complete the quiz questions on Canvas below this video, and then proceed to complete reflection and activities assignments.